The Time Machine is one of those old books that if you didn't know about it before, you have a mind boggling time realizing what kind of firsts it has. Like I did. I know about H.G. Wells in a vague sense, being more familiar with War of the Worlds due to the 2005 movie than with any of his other works. So, when my parents gifted me the time machine after returning from a trip to Portugal, I just shelved the book for 2 years. I had no idea that H.G. Wells was the father of science fiction, or that his book is the first one to think of a machine that could travel through time. Nowadays, that's not an odd concept. We have the TARDIS from Doctor Who and the Wave Rider from DC Legends of Tomorrow. If time travel isn't a personal superpower, then the way to travel through time is through a machine. But to be the first to think of it, well, H.G. Wells certainly had the imagination for it. The story itself is written in the first person perspective. I'm not actually sure if we ever get the name of the person because I don't remember, but by the end, I think they're the only one who does believe that the time traveler is exactly that, a time traveler. The book doesn't have a lot of names, sort of in the same way that a fairy tale does, but it goes like this. Once upon a time, there was a scientist. One day, he summoned a variety of people to his home that housed his lab. He had a medical man, a psychologist, a man named Philby, and us in attendance. He explained the concept of a fourth dimension, of how time is also a space to traverse, and that he was making a machine to do just that. His prototype was done, and he presented how it traveled through time. Not a lot believed him, but the man invited them to return next Friday anyway, when the actual machine would be finished. We returned, a few didn't, and a few more joined. Now there was a medical man, no man named Philby. We were there, together with a publicist and another. Waiting for the time traveler at his dining table, the man came upon the room under dust and with a limp. He ate a meal, washed himself, and guided everyone to the smoke room to tell his tale. He had been to the year 802,701, experienced great and terrible things after his time machine was seized upon by one half of the descendants of man, the Morlocks. The Morlocks are those who descended from the laborers and the poor who were forced underground for work and therefore evolved. The other half, the Eloi, lived on the surface, and they were the descendants of the rich who lived in assured comfort. Before he managed to regain his time machine for the Morlocks, he made the horrible discovery that at some point, whatever food had been given to the Morlocks in their underground world had run out, and out of necessity, they had started to consume the Eloi, feeding, clothing, and essentially raising them to feed on. The descendants of the bourgeoisie were cattle, and the far-off grandchildren of the poor were the farmers. After he managed to regain his time machine, instead of traveling back to the past, the time traveler went further into futurity, till a point where the sun was red and the moon is gone. There he kept pushing further on into time, curious of the fate of the world. At the farthest reaches that he dared, he finds that life still exists in horrible forms. First, it's giant crabs, then it's just creatures of tentacles and black mass. This sight, together with the previous 8 days' worth of time, leave him haunted enough to return to his home, where he then met the company that had come for him. It's a hard tale to believe. Most don't. But still, we go to him the next day, where he's about to set off on another journey on the machine. This time with the tools to gather samples and a camera for visible proof. He asks us for time till lunch, and if we stay, then he will give us undeniable proof of his travels through this fourth dimension. We agree, but soon after remember that we have another appointment. Following after the time traveler into his lab, there is a phantom made of him that disappears in wind and darkness, together with his machine made of brass, ivory, and clear quartz. This is the last time that the time traveler is seen. His person now being missing for 3 years, and the only evidence that he had ever traveled through time being a handful of white flowers that an Eloy friend had supposedly given to him. It really is an interesting read. I don't know how to describe it in any other way. This is one of those older books that's rather easy to read, but you do have to look up a few words for it. So if you're interested, you could just check it out for yourself. It's not that long, it's under 200 pages. And if I did have to say something about it, then one scene particularly stuck out to me. When a time traveler is recounting his first jaunt through time, he explains in great detail what it looked like from his perspective. How the sun and moon became bands of light in the sky. How the stars first joined in that shape but later dissipated into gray. How the sky melted when he traveled. It made me think of when a ship goes into hyperspace in Star Wars. And when I read that part, I was trying to imagine what somebody would think of if they didn't have that visual, because this book was written in 1895. How insane it must be to think up of how light would bend way before Einstein's theory of relativity came to be. And I'm honestly willing to bet that H.G. Wells is the first to think of the idea and then put it into writing.